Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched another human colony vessel turn away from the star system. The New Horizon was old and tired, just like most human ships. Its metal walls were patched and repaired so many times that Jake could barely remember what the original color had been. "Sir, the Vorthic fleet is blocking our path again," said Lieutenant Amy Carter. She was young, but had already learned to hide her anger when speaking about the aliens who ruled this part of space. "They say humans are not allowed in this sector." Jake nodded slowly. He had heard this message 100 times before. The Vorthic were tall, strong aliens with thick gray skin and forearms. They liked to fight and considered humans weak and useless. To them, humans were just another species to be pushed around. "Set course for the outer rim," Jake said. "We'll find somewhere else for our people to live." Chief Engineer Ben Rodriguez looked up from his control panel. "Sir, that's the 4th system this month. The colony ships are running low on fuel and supplies. People are getting scared." Jake understood their fear. For over 200 years, humans had been part of the Galactic Federation. They had been promised peace and prosperity among the stars. Instead, they'd had scraps and leftovers. The good planets went to the stronger species. Humans got the barren worlds that nobody else wanted. The bridge fell silent as they watched the colony ship Endeavor limp toward the outer rim. Jake knew there were 8,000 people on that ship. Families with children, old people, and young. Couples hoping to start new lives. Now they would have to settle on a dead rock with no water and barely any air. On Earth, President Lisa Hamilton sat in her office reading another rejection letter from the Galactic Council. The humans had asked for permission to build a research station in the neutral zone. There were old alien ruins there that might help them understand better technology. The answer was always the same: no. "Madam President," her assistant said as he entered the room, "the Zelani Collective has responded to our trade proposal." Lisa took the document and read it quickly. The Zelani were small, blue-skinned aliens who were very smart. They had the best technology in the galaxy, but they looked down on humans like adults looking at children. "They offer us mining rights on 3 dead asteroids," Lisa said, "in exchange for exclusive access to human agricultural products for 50 years. It was a terrible deal. The asteroids had no valuable minerals, and 50 years of Earth's best food would be worth 100 times more than the mining rights. But it was better than nothing." Lisa signed the document with a heavy heart. Across the galaxy, Dr. Alex Turner was having problems of his own. He worked as a xenorchaeologist, studying old alien civilizations. For months, he had been trying to research something strange he had found in the galactic archives. There were references to an ancient war and something called the Terran Protocols. Every time he tried to access more information, his computer would display the same message: "Access denied, insufficient clearance level." Alex had high clearance for a human, but apparently not high enough for this information. "Computer, show me any references to Terran protocols in the public database," Alex said. "No results found," the computer replied. Alex frowned. That was impossible. He had seen the references with his own eyes. Someone was hiding something, and Alex was determined to find out what. The next day, Alex's security clearance was revoked. His supervisor, a tall alien with green skin and too many eyes, called him into the office. "Dr. Turner," the alien said, "you have been asking questions about restricted information. Humans are not permitted to research certain historical periods." "Which historical periods?" Alex asked. "The periods that do not concern you," the alien replied. "You will focus your research on approved topics only." Alex left the office feeling angry and confused. What was so important about these Terran protocols that they would take away his clearance? And why were humans specifically banned from learning? About them? That evening, Jake Morrison's ship finally reached the outer rim. The New Horizon joined a small fleet of human vessels orbiting a brown dwarf star. It was not much, but it was all they had. "Sir," Amy Carter said, "we're receiving a message from the colony coordinator." On the main screen appeared the face of an older human woman. She looked tired and defeated. "Welcome to Outpost 7, she said. "It's not much, but it's home now. We've got basic supplies and temporary shelters. The children are asking when we can go to a real planet." Jake felt something break inside his chest. These people had trusted him to lead them to a better life. Instead, he had brought them to the edge of nowhere, where they would struggle just to survive. "Tell them we're working on it," Jake said. Though he knew it was a lie. Later that night, Jake stood alone on the observation deck. Through the thick glass, he could see the other human ships floating in the darkness. Their lights looked like stars, but they were dying stars, slowly burning out. Amy Carter joined him at the window. "Sir, do you ever wonder what we were like?" Before we joined the Federation, Jake thought about it. Human history from before first contact was not taught in schools anymore. The official story was that humans had been primitive and violent, saved by the wisdom of the galactic community. "I suppose we were different," Jake said. "Maybe we were better at fighting for what we wanted." "Maybe we still are," Amy said quietly. "We just forgot how." Jake looked at her with surprise. Such thoughts were dangerous. The galactic powers did not like it when humans talked about fighting or resistance. But as he watched the colony ships in the distance, Jake wondered if Amy was right. Perhaps somewhere deep inside, humans still remembered how to be strong. Perhaps they just needed someone to remind them. The next morning brought more bad news. The Vorthik had claimed another star system, one that had been promised to human colonists. The Drakmor Trade Confederation had raised prices on essential supplies again, and the Galactic Council had rejected another human petition for basic. Right. Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and made a decision that would change everything. He opened a channel to all human ships in the fleet. "This is Commander Morrison," he said. "I know things look bad right now. I know we've been pushed around and forgotten. But we're still here. We're still human. And maybe it's time we remembered what that means." The words felt strange in his mouth, but they felt right. Across the fleet, other humans were listening. Some were nodding. Some were beginning to remember. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity's strength. Soon, they would. Remember why that was a mistake. 20 years had passed since Jake Morrison's speech at Outpost 7. The human colonies had grown slowly, building life on the hard worlds the galaxy had given them. Children who had never seen Earth now called these distant places home. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of his ship, Liberty's Edge. It was one of the newer human vessels, built with salvaged parts and old technology. The ship was not pretty, but it was strong. Ryan had learned to be proud of what humans could build with so little. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're getting a distress signal from New Terra Colony." Ryan turned toward the screen. New Terra was one of the largest human settlements, home to 8,000 people. It had farms, schools, and families trying to build a future far from Earth. "What's the emergency?" Ryan asked. "Vorthik ships, sir. A whole fleet of them. They're moving toward the colony and not answering our calls." Ryan felt his blood turn cold. The Vorthik were at war with the Zalani Collective now. For months, the two powers had been fighting over territory and resources. The Drakmor Trade Confederation stayed neutral, selling weapons to both sides and getting rich. How long until they reached New Terra? Ryan asked. 6 hours, sir." Ryan immediately sent a message to the Galactic Federation requesting help. The response came back within minutes. "Human settlements are non-priority assets. All available ships are protecting core Federation worlds. Ryan stared at the message. Non-priority assets. That's what they called 8,000 human lives. Children playing in the streets, families having dinner, people who had never hurt anyone. "Sir," his first officer said, "we have to do something." Ryan looked at his small ship. The Liberty's Edge had basic weapons and shields, but nothing that could stop a Vorthic fleet. Still, he could not just watch while his people were slaughtered. "Set course for New Terra," Ryan ordered. "Maximum speed." On Earth, President Lisa Hamilton had retired years ago. Her daughter, Colonel Nina Hamilton, now worked for the human military. It was a small force, mostly used for keeping peace between colonies and protecting supply ships. Nina had always been curious about human history. She spent her free time reading old files and studying the time before first contact. What she found confused her. The official records said humans had been primitive and violent, but there were gaps in the timeline. Big gaps. "Computer, show me military records from the year 2156, Nina said. "Access denied. Those files are classified above your level." Nina tried different years, different searches. The same answer every time. Someone did not want humans to know about their own past. Nina gathered a small group of other human officers who shared her curiosity. They met in secret, sharing what little information they could find. Lieutenant Mike Chun had discovered that human DNA had been modified sometime after first contact. Sergeant Lisa Walker found references to something called psychological conditioning in medical files. "They changed us," Nina said during one of their meetings. "Not just our history, but our actual bodies and minds." "Changed us how?" asked Captain Tom Davis. "I think they made us less aggressive," Nina replied, "less willing to fight back." The group fell silent. The idea was frightening. If it was true, then humans were not naturally as peaceful as they seemed. They had been forced to be this way. Dr. Alex Turner had never stopped looking for answers. His security clearance had been taken away, but he found other ways to research. He talked to old humans who remembered the early days after first contact. He studied alien languages to read documents that were never translated. Slowly, the truth began to emerge. The Terran protocols were not just historical records. They were instructions for containing a dangerous species. That species was humanity. 600 years ago, humans had been expanding through space on their own. They had primitive technology, but were fierce fighters. They used tactics that other species found disturbing. They never surrendered, never gave up, and never stopped pushing forward. The three major galactic powers had united to stop them, not to welcome them, but to cage them. They had won through superior numbers and technology, but it had been a close fight. Too close. After the war, they had made sure humans could never be a threat again. They modified human genetics to reduce aggression. They used psychological conditioning to make humans accept their place as servants. They erased the historical records and rewrote human culture. Dr. Turner felt sick as he learned the truth. Every human alive was living a lie. Their peaceful nature was not real. Their acceptance of second-class treatment was programmed into them. The conditioning was breaking down. As generations passed, the genetic modifications were becoming less effective. Some humans were starting to remember what they had been. Captain Ryan Brooks reached New Terra just as the Vorthic fleet arrived. The colony sent out desperate calls for help, but Ryan's ship was alone. The Liberty's Edge was outnumbered 50-1. "Captain," his weapons officer said, "our systems are locked. Federation override codes are preventing us from firing." Ryan stared at the screen. The Vorthic ships were moving toward the colony, their weapons charging. Soon they would begin the massacre, and Ryan could do nothing to stop it. That's when something inside him snapped. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb was working in the engine room when he felt it. A strange sensation, like waking up from a long dream. Suddenly, he was angry. Not just frustrated or upset, but truly angry in a way he had never felt before. "Sir," Marcus called to Captain Brooks, "I think I can override the weapon locks." "How?" Ryan asked. "I don't know, sir. I just know I can." Marcus's hands moved over the controls with confidence he had never possessed. His mind was working in new ways, seeing solutions that had not been there before. The Federation locks were designed to stop peaceful humans, but Marcus no longer felt peaceful. "Weapons are online, Captain," Marcus reported. Ryan looked at the Vorthic ships approaching the colony. For the first time in his life, he felt the urge to fight back. Not just to defend, but to attack with everything he had. "All weapons, fire at will," Ryan ordered. The Liberty's Edge opened fire with a fury that surprised everyone, including Ryan. The ship's weapons, which had always seemed adequate, now blazed with deadly accuracy. Ryan found himself using tactics he had never learned, thinking like a warrior he had never been. The Vorthic were unprepared. Their computer systems, programmed with data about docile humans, could not predict what Ryan would do next. He rammed one of their ships, something no civilized species would ever do. He used his own vessel as a weapon, caring more about victory than survival. The battle lasted only minutes. When it was over, half the Vorthic fleet was destroyed or disabled. The others fled, sending confused reports about humans who fought. Like demons, Ryan stood on his bridge, breathing hard. His ship was damaged, but New Terra was safe. More importantly, something had changed inside him. He felt awake for the first time in his life. News of the battle spread quickly through human space. Colonel Mina Hamilton heard about it and realized what was happening. The conditioning was failing. Humans were remembering their true nature. Nina made a decision that would change everything. She contacted Dr. Turner and shared what she had learned about human history. Together, they began to plan. President Hamilton, now old but still sharp, listened to her daughter's report. When Nina finished speaking, the president was quiet for a long time. "You're saying we were warriors once," she said finally. "Yes, Mother. And we can be again." President Hamilton looked out her window at the earth below. Somewhere up there, Captain Brooks had fought back against impossible odds and won. Other humans were beginning to remember what they had been. "Do it," she said. "Release the records. Tell our people the truth." Nina nodded and began to work. Within hours, the suppressed historical records were being transmitted to every human colony. The message was simple. Remember who you were. Remember what they took from you. Remember why they feared us. Across human space, people began to wake up. The peaceful servants the galaxy had created were disappearing. In their place, something older and more dangerous was emerging. The galaxy's three major powers realized what was happening. Emergency meetings were called. Ancient fears were discussed. The Terran protocols were reviewed. The decision was unanimous. Humanity had to be stopped before they remembered too much. The galaxy could not afford to let the warriors return. War was coming, and this time, the humans would be ready. The massacre at New Terra changed everything. Even though Captain Ryan Brooks had saved the colony, the attack had shown humans something terrible. The galaxy did not care if they lived or died. They were alone. Word spread quickly through human space. The Vorthic had tried to destroy New Terra, not because it was a military target, but because it was full of humans. To the galaxy's powers, human lives meant nothing. Ryan stood on the bridge of Liberty's Edge, reading reports from other human colonies. The pattern was the same everywhere. Alien fleets were moving toward human settlements. The three major powers had made their decision. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're getting signals from human ships all across the sector. They're asking for orders. Ryan looked at the tactical display. Dozens of human vessels were converging on his position. Cargo ships, colony transports, even small personal craft. None of them were military vessels, but their crews were ready to fight. "This is Captain Brooks to all human ships," Ryan said. "We have a choice. We can run and hide, or we can stand and fight. I know what I'm choosing." The response was immediate. Every human ship in the area moved to join him. They had no formal training, no military coordination, but they had something else. They had remembered what they were. On Earth, Colonel Nina. Hamilton was working frantically to organize the human military. Her small force was growing as civilians volunteered to fight. Old people who had never held weapons were learning to use them. Children barely old enough to walk were helping to load supplies. "Colonel," Sergeant Lisa Walker reported, "we've got a problem. The Federation has locked down all human military equipment. We can't access our own weapons." Nina smiled grimly. "Then we'll make new ones." Across human space, the same scene was playing out. Humans were taking apart mining equipment and turning it into weapons. They were retrofitting cargo, ships with armor and guns. They were building things the galaxy had never seen before Dr. Alex Turner had joined Nina's team, bringing with him the most important discovery of all. Hidden in the old records, he had found references to ancient human military bases. These bases had been built before first contact and abandoned and forgotten. "They're still out there," Turner told Nina. "In the outer rim, where nobody goes. If we can find them, we might have a chance." Nina dispatched teams to search for the lost bases. What they found amazed them. The bases were not just intact, they were still operational. Automated systems had been maintaining them for centuries. Waiting for humans to return. Captain Brooks was the first to reach one of the bases. It was built into an asteroid, hidden and protected. When his ship docked, the base systems came online. Automatically. "Welcome home," the computer said in an old human voice. "We have been waiting for you." Inside the base, Brooks found weapons and equipment that made his modern human technology look like toys. These were the tools of the humans, who had once fought the galaxy to a standstill. But the most important discovery was not weapons. It was a person. Deep in the base's core, suspended in a medical pod, was a human woman. The nameplate read, "Admiral Kate Sullivan, Human Space Command." She had been in stasis for over 600 years, waiting for the day humanity would need her again. Brooks and his team carefully revived the Admiral. She was old, but her mind was sharp. When she learned what had happened to her species, her reaction was swift and terrible. "They neutered us," she said, her voice full of cold anger. "They turned warriors into sheep." Admiral Sullivan took command of the growing human resistance. She had been there during the original war, had seen how the galaxy's powers operated. She knew their weaknesses. "They think they know us," she told the assembled human commanders. "They think we're still the broken species they created. They're wrong." Under Sullivan's leadership, the human military began to change. She taught them tactics the galaxy had never seen. She showed them how to use their disadvantages as strengths. Galaxy's powers were confident as they moved their fleets toward human space. They had overwhelming numbers and superior technology. What could a few thousand humans do against them? They were about to find out. The first major battle took place at the Titan colony. A combined fleet of Vorthik, Zelani, and Drakmor ships surrounded the human settlement, demanding surrender. The humans refused. Captain Brooks, now commanding a small fleet of converted human ships, met the alien force head-on. What followed shocked the galaxy. The humans fought with no regard for their own safety. They used ramming attacks, suicide runs, and weapons that violated every galactic convention. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting until they exploded. Most disturbing to the aliens was the human creativity. They used tactics that made no sense, strategies that seemed insane. They turned cargo containers into missiles, used mining explosives as torpedoes, and modified their own life. Support systems to create poisonous gas weapons. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, the alien fleet was destroyed. The humans had won, but at a terrible cost. Half their ships were gone, and hundreds of humans were dead. But they had proven something important. Humans could fight back and win. News of the victory spread through human space like wildfire. Colonies that had been preparing to surrender suddenly found the courage to resist. Human ships that had been hiding began to hunt alien vessels. The galaxy's leaders were alarmed. In emergency sessions, they reviewed the battle records and tried to understand what had gone wrong. The humans were supposed to be weak and docile. Instead, they were fighting like the demons of old stories. "We need to end this quickly," the Vorthic War leader said, "before they remember too much." The Zelani collective agreed. Their computer models showed that if the human rebellion continued, it could spread to other oppressed species. The galaxy's careful order could collapse. The Drakmor Trade Confederation, always focused on profit, saw opportunity in the chaos. They began secretly selling weapons to both sides, but their best equipment went to the galaxy's powers. Admiral Sullivan watched the alien fleets gathering and knew what was coming. The galaxy's powers were preparing for total war. They would not make the mistake of underestimating humans again. "They're going to try to wipe us out," she told her commanders. "All of us. Every human settlement, every colony, every ship." The room fell silent. The humans had won some battles, but they were still vastly outnumbered. The galaxy's combined fleets could destroy every human world if they chose to. "What do we do?" Colonel Nina Hamilton asked. Admiral Sullivan smiled, and, for the first time since her revival, she looked truly dangerous. "We do what humans have always done when faced with extinction. We fight harder." Sullivan began preparing for the ultimate battle. She gathered every human ship, every weapon, every person willing to fight. She sent secret messages to the hidden bases, activating defense systems that had slept for centuries. But most importantly, she began working on something the galaxy had never seen before. A weapon that would use humanity's greatest strength against their enemies. The galaxy's powers were preparing to deploy the Omega Protocol, a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems. They would use it to burn away every trace of human civilization. What they did not know was that humans were preparing their own ultimate weapon. Not a device or a bomb, but something far more dangerous. They were preparing to show the galaxy what humans looked like when they had nothing left to lose. The final confrontation was coming. The galaxy's powers had decided to end the human problem once and for all. They would deploy overwhelming force and crush the rebellion before it could spread. But Admiral Sullivan was counting on their overconfidence. She had fought these aliens before, when humanity was still strong. She knew their weaknesses, their fears, their deepest secrets. The humans had been caged for centuries, their nature suppressed, and their history erased. But chains, no matter how strong, could not hold back the human spirit forever. The galaxy was about to learn why they had been so afraid of humans in the first place. And this time, there would be no cage strong enough to hold them. The galaxy's combined fleets were massive beyond anything humans had ever seen. 3,000 warships from the Vorthic Empire, 2,000 advanced vessels from the Zelani Collective, and 1,500 heavily armed ships from the Drakmor Trade Confederation. Together, they formed the largest military force in galactic history. Their target was simple: complete extinction of the human species. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the rebuilt human dreadnought Indomitable, watching the enemy fleets approach. Her ship was one of only 300 human vessels, most of them converted civilian craft. The odds were 20 to 1 against them. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "the enemy fleet is sending a message." On the main screen appeared the face of the Vorthic war leader, a massive alien with scars covering his gray skin. Behind him stood representatives of the other two powers. "Human Admiral," the war leader said, "you have one chance to surrender. Lay down your weapons and we will allow your species to live as slaves. Continue to resist and we will burn every human world to ash." Sullivan looked at the alien leader and smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "War leader," she said, "I have a counteroffer. Turn your fleets around and leave human space. Do this, and we might let some of you live." The alien leaders looked shocked. The human admiral was outnumbered 20 to 1, and she was making threats? "You are insane," the war leader said. "We will destroy you." "You're welcome to try," Sullivan replied. "But remember, we tried to warn you." The transmission ended. Sullivan turned to her crew, all of whom were watching her with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "today we remind the galaxy why they were afraid of us. Today we show them what happens when you corner a human." The battle began at dawn, ship time. The alien fleets moved forward in perfect formation, their weapons charging. They expected the humans to run or hide. Instead, the human ships accelerated directly toward them. Captain Ryan Brooks, commanding Liberty's Edge, led the first wave of human fighters. His ship was small and old, but it moved with deadly purpose. Behind him flew dozens of other human vessels, all of them racing toward certain death. "Remember," Brooks told his crew, "we're not trying to survive this. We're trying to hurt them so badly they'll never forget." The first impact came when Brooks rammed his ship directly into a Vorthic heavy cruiser. The explosion lit up space. For miles around, both ships were destroyed, but the alien fleet had learned something important. The humans were not going to fight by the rules. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The humans fought with a savagery that shocked their enemies. They used their own ships as weapons, turning them into guided missiles. They modified their engines to overload and create massive explosions. They even used their own life support systems as chemical weapons. Colonel Nina Hamilton led a boarding party onto a Zelani command ship. The aliens had never seen anything like human Marines in close combat. The Zelani were advanced and intelligent, but they had never learned to fight with knives and bare hands. "They're not using weapons," one Zelani officer reported in panic. "They're using their teeth." Nina and her team had enhanced themselves with pre-contact genetic modifications. They were faster, stronger, and more aggressive than any human the aliens had fought before. They tore through the ship's defenses like wild animals. The Zelani ship's commander watched in horror as humans overran his bridge. These were not the peaceful servants he had expected. These were monsters from the galaxy's darkest nightmares. "Chief," Petty Officer Marcus Webb had taken command of a small group of human ships after his captain was killed. He was using tactics that made no sense to the alien commanders. His ships would appear to retreat and suddenly turn and attack from unexpected angles. "They're not following standard battle doctrine," the Drakmor fleet commander complained. "How can we predict their moves if they don't follow the rules?" The answer was simple. They couldn't. The humans had thrown away every rule of civilized warfare. They fought like they had nothing to lose, because they didn't. But the aliens had one advantage the humans couldn't match: numbers. For every human ship destroyed, the aliens lost 3 or 4 vessels. But the humans were running out of ships much faster than the aliens. Admiral Sullivan watched the battle from her command bridge. The humans were fighting magnificently, but they were being overwhelmed. Soon, The alien fleets would break through and reach the human colonies. That's when Sullivan activated her secret weapon. Hidden throughout human space were the ancient bases that Dr. Alex Turner had discovered. These bases had been sleeping for centuries, but they were not empty. They contained the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. All base commanders, Sullivan broadcast, activate Protocol 7. Across human space, the ancient bases came online. Massive weapons that had been silent for 600 years began to charge. These were not the simple guns the current humans used. These were the weapons of the humans who had once fought the galaxy to a standstill. The first alien ship to encounter the ancient defenses was a Vorthek battleship. It was massive, heavily armored, and confident in its power. The base weapons hit it with energy beams that cut through its armor like paper. But the real surprise came when the base weapons began targeting multiple ships at once. The alien fleets found themselves under attack from weapons they could not see, fired from positions they could not locate. Where are these attacks coming from? The Zelani fleet commander demanded his science officer check the sensors. Unknown. Sir, the energy signatures don't match any known human technology. That was because they were not known to the current galaxy. These were the weapons of the old humans, the ones who had been warriors. The tide of battle began to turn. The alien fleets, which had been confident in their overwhelming numbers, found themselves fighting on two fronts. The human ships attacked from the front, while the hidden bases struck from behind. But the aliens were not defenseless. They had brought their own ultimate weapon, the Omega Protocol. The Omega device was a weapon of mass destruction, capable of destroying entire star systems. The galaxy's powers had built it in secret, planning to use it only in the most desperate situations. This qualified as desperate. Prepare the Omega device, the war leader ordered. We will burn out human space entirely. The device was massive, requiring 3 ships to carry and deploy it. As it powered up, space itself began to distort around it. This weapon could destroy not just planets, but the very stars that warmed them. Admiral Sullivan detected the Omega device as soon as it began charging. She had heard stories of such weapons, but had never seen one. If it deployed successfully, it would destroy every human world in the sector. All ships, Sullivan broadcast, converge on the Omega platform. Whatever it takes, we have to stop that weapon. Every human ship in the battle changed course, racing toward the alien superweapon. They knew it was suicide, but they also knew that if they failed, humanity would be extinct. Captain Brooks, somehow still alive despite his earlier ramming attack, led the charge. His ship was barely holding together, but he pushed it to maximum speed. Liberty's edge to all human ships, he transmitted. It's been an honor serving with you. The final assault on the Omega platform was a nightmare of explosions and death. Human ships threw themselves at the alien defenses with no regard for survival. They used every weapon they had, every trick they knew, and when those failed, they used their ships as battering rams. The platform's defenses were formidable, but they were not designed to stop enemies who cared nothing for their own lives. One by one, the human ships broke through. Brooks's ship was the first to reach the platform itself. The Liberty's edge was on fire and losing atmosphere, but it still flew. Brooks aimed his ship at the Omega device's power core and engaged maximum thrust. For humanity, he whispered, and then his ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up half the star system. The Omega device's power core was damaged, but not destroyed. It began to charge erratically, its energy patterns becoming unstable. The alien commanders realized with horror that their ultimate weapon was about to explode in their faces. Evacuate the platform, the war leader ordered. All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance. But Admiral Sullivan was not finished. She had one more card to play. All human ships, she broadcast, ramming speed. Take as many of them with us as you can. The surviving human vessels turned toward the retreating alien fleets. They had lost the battle, but they could still make the victory too expensive for their enemies to celebrate. What followed was the most costly few minutes in galactic history. Human ships, many of them barely functioning, crashed into alien vessels with devastating effect. The aliens won the battle, but at a price that shocked the galaxy. When the fighting ended, the alien fleets had lost nearly half their ships. The humans had lost almost everything, but they had proven something important. They had shown the galaxy that humans, when pushed to the edge, would drag their enemies into the abyss with them. The news of the battle spread quickly through the galaxy. Other species, long oppressed by the three major powers, began to whisper among themselves. If humans could fight like this, what might they be capable of? The galaxy's leaders realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had thought the Centauri system, had become the center of the galaxy's attention. Here, the three major powers had gathered their remaining fleets for one final assault on humanity. They had learned from their previous defeat and brought even more ships, more weapons, and a new version of the Omega device. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the massive enemy fleet through the viewscreen. 5,000 alien warships filled the space around Centauri Prime. Behind them, protected by layers of shields and escort vessels, sat the new Omega platform. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "enemy fleet strength is confirmed." "We're outnumbered 30 to 1. Sullivan nodded. The human fleet had grown since the last battle, but not by much. Volunteers from across human space had joined them, bringing everything from military vessels to converted cargo ships. They had maybe 200 ships total. "Any word from the other species?" Sullivan asked. "Yes, ma'am. The Keth rebels have sent 50 ships. The Nexar freedom fighters are bringing 30. Even some Vorthak outcasts have joined us." Sullivan smiled. The galaxy's oppressed species had been watching the human rebellion with great interest. Now some of them were ready to fight alongside the humans against their common oppressors. "Signal all ships," Sullivan ordered. "Today we finish what our ancestors started 600 years ago. Today we show the galaxy that freedom cannot be destroyed." The alien fleet commander, a Zelani named Vex Prime, opened communications with the human fleet. His blue face appeared on Sullivan's screen, along with the Vorthik war leader and a Drakmor trade prince. "Admiral Sullivan," Vex Prime said, "this is your final warning. Surrender now and your species will be allowed to exist in work camps. Continue to resist and we will activate the Omega device." Sullivan looked at the three alien leaders and laughed. It was a sound full of dark humor and deadly promise. "Vex Prime," she said, "let me tell you something about humans. We don't surrender. We don't give up. And we sure as hell don't beg for mercy from those who enslaved us." The war leader leaned forward. "Then you will all die." "Maybe," Sullivan agreed. "But we'll take enough of you with us that the rest of the galaxy will remember this day forever." The transmission ended. Sullivan turned to her crew, men and women who had chosen to fight, even though they knew they would probably die. "All ships." She broadcast, "This is Admiral Sullivan. 600 years ago, our ancestors fought these same enemies. They lost, but they hurt them badly enough that the galaxy spent centuries making sure we could never fight again. Today, we prove that their efforts failed." Across the human fleet, crews prepared for battle. On the converted cargo ship New Hope, Captain Lisa Walker checked her weapons one last time. Her ship had been a grain hauler just months ago. Now it carried enough explosives to destroy a small moon. On the military vessel Defiant, Colonel Nina. Hamilton suited up in combat armor. She would be leading the boarding parties against the Omega platform. It was a suicide mission, but someone had to do it. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb, now commanding his own ship after proving himself in battle, gathered his crew around him. They were young humans, most of them born after the rebellion began. They had never known the fear that had controlled their parents. Remember, Webb told them, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species the galaxy has ever oppressed. Today, we show them all that tyranny can be defeated. The battle began when the alien fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Their plan was simple. Overwhelm the human defenses, then deploy the Omega device to sterilize human space completely. But Admiral Sullivan had a different plan. All ships scatter formation, she ordered. Hit them from every direction at once. The human fleet broke apart, each ship choosing its own target. This was not the organized battle the aliens expected. It was chaos, and humans thrived in chaos. Captain Walker's New Hope dove straight into the enemy formation, dodging between massive alien warships. Her cargo holds full of explosives. She was essentially a flying bomb looking for the best place to detonate. New Hope to all ships, Walker transmitted. I'm going for their command cluster. Cover me if you can. 3 Vorthic heavy cruisers moved to intercept her. Walker's ship was fast, but not heavily armed. She would never make it through their defenses alone. That's when the Keth rebels arrived. The Keth were an insectoid species that had been enslaved by the Vorthic for generations. Their ships were small and fast, perfect for hit-and-run attacks. They swarmed the Vorthic cruisers like angry wasps, giving Walker the opening she needed. Walker's ship reached the alien command cluster and detonated. The explosion took out 6 enemy vessels and damaged dozens more. Walker and her crew were gone, but their sacrifice opened a hole in the alien lines. Colonel Nina Hamilton led her assault team through that hole, racing toward the Omega platform in small, fast ships. The platform was heavily defended, but humans had learned how to use their enemies' strengths against them. The platform's shields were designed to stop large warships, not small fighters. Hamilton's team slipped through the defensive grid and landed on the platform's outer hull. Breaching charges set, Hamilton reported, beginning assault on the power core. Inside the platform, the alien defenders were waiting. They had learned from previous encounters with human boarding parties and were prepared for close combat, but they were not prepared for what humans had become. Hamilton and her team moved through the platform like a force of nature. They used weapons the aliens had never seen, tactics that made no sense, and a level of aggression that bordered on insanity. They're not trying to capture the platform, the alien commander reported in panic. They're trying to destroy it with themselves inside. That was exactly what they were doing. Hamilton's team had no intention of surviving the mission. Their job was to damage the Omega device beyond repair, and they would do it even if it killed them. Meanwhile, Admiral Sullivan was fighting the battle of her life. The Indomitable was surrounded by enemy ships, taking damage from all sides. Her crew worked frantically to keep the ship operational as explosions rocked the hull. Admiral, her weapons officer reported, we've lost main guns 3 and 4. Shields are down to 20%, Sullivan nodded. The ship was dying around her, but it was still fighting, just like humanity itself. Target their flagship, she ordered. All remaining weapons, full power. The Indomitable's guns spoke with thunder, striking the alien command ship. The enemy vessel's shields flared and failed. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull, but the aliens were winning. For every enemy ship the humans destroyed, they lost 2 of their own. The human fleet was being ground down by superior numbers. That's when the unexpected happened. Across the galaxy, other Oppressed species had been watching the battle. They saw humans fighting impossible odds for the simple right to be free. They saw ordinary people willing to die rather than live as slaves. And they decided they had seen enough. The first reinforcements to arrive were the Nexer, a proud warrior race that had been subjugated by the Drekmor. Their ships were old but well-maintained, and their crews burned with centuries of suppressed anger. Next came the Yalfik, a peaceful species that had been forced to work in Zalani factories. They brought cargo ships converted into mobile weapons platforms, crude but effective. Then came others, species that had been conquered, enslaved, or simply ignored by the galaxy's major powers. They had watched humanity's rebellion and found their own courage. The alien commanders watched in horror as their overwhelming advantage evaporated. They were no longer fighting just humans. They were fighting half the galaxy. All ships, Vex Prime ordered, ignore the reinforcements. Focus. On the Omega platform, we must deploy the weapon before. His transmission was cut off as the platform exploded. Colonel Nina Hamilton had reached the power core. Her team was gone, killed by alien defenders, but she had managed to place the final charges. The explosion tore the platform apart and lit up the Suntorii system like a new star. With their ultimate weapon destroyed, the alien fleets found themselves facing an enemy that refused to die. The humans fought with the fury of the damned, while their new allies attacked with the rage of the long oppressed. The battle turned into a rout. Alien ships fled in all directions, abandoning their formations and their plans. The mighty fleets that had once terrorized the galaxy ran before a force of freed slaves and forgotten warriors. Admiral Sullivan, her ship barely functioning, opened communications to the fleeing enemy fleets. "This is Admiral Sullivan to all alien forces," she said. "You have seen what happens when you try to destroy us. Remember this day. Remember that humanity will never again bow to tyrants." The war leader's face appeared on her screen one last time. The proud Vorthik looked beaten and afraid. "This is not over," he said. Sullivan smiled. "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy's balance of power had shifted forever. The three major powers, their fleets broken and their authority shattered, could no longer maintain their grip on the galaxy. On Earth, President Hamilton addressed the human people and their new allies. The old woman looked tired but proud as she spoke. "Today we have won more than a battle," she said. "We have won the right to determine our own destiny. Never again will humanity bow to those who rule."